Do you want the Seiko Alpinist experience for just $80? Well, this Chinese brand might have just delivered exactly that. Because not only does this watch look similar to the Alpinist, but it delivers an almost identical spec sheet. Hello there, my name's Kieran, welcome to Top Tier Ticket, I hope you're having a good day. Question, do you need an everyday watch that has great specs, costs less than $100, and has a cool colour combination? If yes, then this watch is definitely for you. I was recently browsing AliExpress looking for something fun, and this caught my attention immediately. Mostly because I thought it to be a good alternative to the Seiko Alpinist without being a boring copycat. Yes, I would consider this a true homage. It's taken inspiration from the Alpinist without just ripping it off completely. In fact, Addiesdive themselves call this watch the Addiesdive Alpinist on their official YouTube channel, all but confirming that that was their intention with this release. So the question is, have they actually made a good cheap Alpinist alternative, or have they failed miserably? You'll find a link for this watch in the description, but let's take a closer look. So this is the Addiesdive AD2055. Some of you may know Addiesdive because they make a watch called the AD2030. Comes in at around $50, has a great dial, Seiko Mecha Quartz movement. Only problem with that one is it does come with a mineral glass. It's also a little bit smaller in size, so it doesn't really work for people with larger wrists. However, this one is definitely going to work for a lot more people because we've got a little bit more contemporary sizing on this. And I think Addiesdive is developing a little bit of a reputation now amongst collectors and enthusiasts for creating the best value watches on AliExpress. Now, as of the time of recording this video, you can currently get this watch on AliExpress for exactly $80. And I think for $80, what this watch is offering is incredibly appealing. There really isn't much competition on AliExpress in terms of this spec sheet for this price, especially when you consider that this watch has somewhat of an original design. Now, what's insane about this package is that for $80, you are getting an automatic movement inside. And I bet you can't guess what movement's inside here. Yes, that's correct, it's the Seiko NH35. This movement costs around $25 on AliExpress. I know because I've picked one up myself for a custom build. So getting a $25 movement in an $80 watch, that's already a good percentage in terms of the value. When you factor in the design, all the other components, delivery costs, this watch is insane value. Now, I'm all but certain that this NH35 has had absolutely zero regulation from the factory. They're likely just slapping these inside of the watch as quickly as they can to make the most money possible. And you can't really blame them for that. You can regulate these yourself at home, they're really easy to do. And I actually think that date window integrates pretty well with the overall dial design. Okay, yes, it would look better if it had a yellow finish so that it kind of matched the faux patina of the indexes and the hands, but I still think it looks rather balanced and it doesn't throw off the symmetry of the dial too much. But one thing I do massively appreciate about this watch is those oversized numerals. Now, these numerals sort of have a 3D construction. They're not applied, but they're sort of printed that thickly that they have depth to them. And that also means that the luminescence on this watch is pretty decent. I'll show you that soon. Now, another thing that I love is this huge handset. I love watches that offer insane legibility like this watch does. I'm also a big fan of an arrowed hour hand. I know a lot of people aren't. For me, it's a plus. And generally speaking, I think the colors of those numerals and the dial just work really well together. Of course, this is a tried and tested color combination that's been used on many watches, so you can't really give credit to Addiesdive for going down this route, but you can give credit to Addiesdive for pulling it off well. Then on the outside of those indexes, we have like a military style rail track, including a little triangle up at the 12 o'clock, which I like as a little nod to military watches. And there's also different finishes amongst the dial surface. There's a metallic sunburst finish in the center, and then like a grain texture on the outer. This dial is just jam-packed with details. I think it's incredibly good looking, and for the price point, I don't think you'll find many better looking dials than this, at least for my taste. Now, as mentioned, the lume on this watch is actually pretty good, and that's really because there's a lot of real estate for that lume to operate. There's a lot in the hands, there's a lot on the indexes, there's even some on the markers within the rail track, but for $80, the lume on this watch has no right being this good. Now, covering that beautiful dial is a sapphire crystal. There is some anti-reflective treatment on here. Admittedly, it's not as clear as some of the crystals you've likely experienced, but it's definitely good enough, and having a sapphire crystal on a watch that costs $80, again, is just insane value. Now, the case on this watch is your industry standard 316L stainless steel. It features quite a thin sloped bezel holding that crystal, and I would describe the silhouette of this case as, well, just a basic wristwatch. There's nothing that really stands out, no real detailing to this case. It's unoffensive and it just does the job that it needs to do, I do think that the case has a pleasant curvature to it that does help with sort of wearability, and we do have a solid case back on this watch that's engraved with a bit of a spec sheet and then the Addiesdive logo in the center. Now, for an everyday watch, usually you want just like one or two polished surfaces here or there to just offer a little bit of versatility. Typically, it's tool watches that feature completely brushed finishes like this. That being said, I think the dial has enough detail to sort of make up for the lack of polishing that the case has. And I have to give credit to Addiesdive for just having a good level of finishing. There's no real flaws, uneven surfaces, they've just done a good job with it, you know? Now moving down to the bracelet, we do have this oyster style construction, you know, your typical Rolex style bracelet. And again, we do have solid links for the bracelet. Honestly blew me away with this watch is the taper to this bracelet. It starts at 20mm up at the lugs and it tapers down to a beautiful 16mm. I love it when bracelets have a heavy taper like this and the clasp is nice and small too. I just think it looks a little bit more elegant. And again, the bracelet is echoing that finishing of the case with a completely brushed finish and a little bit of polishing on the sides. Now this clasp does feature 5 levels of micro adjustment. It is a pressed upper and a milled lower, and features a double push button deployant. Now it's the size where I actually think that this watch is going to be mega popular amongst collectors, because we are coming in at that sort of universal size that works for a lot of people. This watch comes in with a 39mm case diameter. The lug to lug on this watch is a hair under 49mm, and then the thickness is probably the most impressive measurement on here, is just under 12mm. I will say that this watch does offer like a substantial wearing experience because of that long lug to lug and just how wide that dial is. Yes, it's only a 39mm case, but the dial is so large in comparison with the case that it does have an impactful visual experience. But the most impressive dimension for me is that case thickness. Typically NH35 powered watches are thicker than this, especially when you consider that this watch has a screw down case back and it also delivers 200 meters of water resistance. Indeed, that screw down case back and a screw down crown delivers that water resistance rating. Now I'm always incredibly skeptical when AliExpress brands say that they have 200 meters of water resistance because I always feel like it's not been tested, but the main thing for me is that a screw down crown and a screw down case back should mean that you should be able to go swimming with this watch no problem at all. But it is that 200 meter water resistance rating that again makes it such a great alpinist alternative. Now I'm going to make a bold statement, but I believe it to be true. I think that this is the best value watch that I've ever reviewed. Now this isn't a watch that I would personally buy and wear often in my collection because I do enjoy that slight more refinement in my watches. And one thing I will give this watch massive credit for is just having tons of character. There are so many watches on AliExpress that are boring, that are copies, that are Rolex knockoffs. This watch is not that. Addiesdive have put some work into the design here to create something that's fun and quirky. Yes, it is influenced by the Seiko Alpinist, but it's put its own little spin on the genre to make something different. But let's be honest, less than $100 for this watch is an absolute crime. If you look at what a lot of micro brands are offering out there for $200, $300, $400, this watch puts them to shame. Again, it is lacking that slight bit of refinement, that slight bit of detail that some people require, but in terms of just an insane value package, you definitely can't go wrong with something like this. And if you are interested in picking this watch up, you'll find an affiliate link for it in the description. But if this Addiesdive watch isn't to your taste, but you still want to spend less than $100, then go and check out my top 10 watches under $50 video. Great suggestions, all cheap as chips, all really good watches. Go and check it out. I'll see you over there, guys. Bye for now.